Hello everyone and welcome back to Walford Weekly Podcast, your weekly podcast all about EastEnders. Another week brings a lot of new stories, but not only new stories, we have a new member of the team. Anyone who follows us on Twitter or Instagram or our Facebook group, don't forget you can follow us on any of those just by searching Walford Weekly Podcast. You may have noticed that there's a new face. His name is Rob Innes, and he is with us right now. Hi Rob.
Hello, another recast.
Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background information and how you became a fan of EastEnders.
Well, I've been a fan of EastEnders from as long as I can remember, and I can remember all the classic 90s episodes that everybody was so obsessed with, and I've just kind of stuck with it since then. It's kind of got me into the writing that I do. It's just a soap that I've always kind of stuck with through thick and thin, apart from the sock era, and and it's just a show that I've got a huge amount of passion for, and I can't wait to be able to geek out about it and have a good reason to do it and not have somebody yawning when I'm trying to do it. So it's all very exciting.
I know, we're absolutely thrilled to have you here, Rob. Honestly, it's great to have you.
Thanks for inviting me.
No, honestly, we wouldn't have asked anyone else. We're not going to go without saying we all miss Ben. Ben is obviously going to carry on doing the YouTube channel. He's going to be doing the spoiler cast every Tuesday, and also he's going to carry on doing the review of the year at the end of each new year, and also when it's been aired on Classic as well. Before we start, we're going to ask you a few questions to see what kind of EastEnders fan you are.
Oh Lord, okay, go.
Okay, so it's quite easy. You need to give an answer as quickly as you can, and it's just a choice of two each time. So here we go. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here we go. So first of all, are you a Fowler or a Bill?
Fowler.
Would you want a salsa class with Kim Hubbard or a choir practice with Jean Slater?
Kim.
A quiet ceremony at Gretna for your wedding or a huge traditional party on the square?
Oh, traditional party on the square.
Good. Night in the Vic or clubbing at the Prince Albert?
Oh, start off in the Vic, then go to the Prince Albert, I think.
Oh, okay. Mitchell or... That's okay. Mitchell or Watts?
Oh, Mitchell.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, no. Oh, Mitchell or Watts. Oh, yeah, in that case, Watts.
Oh,
Watts.
Yeah. Sharon, 100%. Sausage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sausage surprise or a fishy basket?
I think sausage surprise.
Dodgems on Clacton Pier or jet ski in Portugal?
Oh, jet ski in Portugal.
Yeah. You order at Cathy's a double mocha with extra hot skimmed oat milk or coffee black?
Mocha.
Rolly or Willy?
Little Willy, I think.
Willy or Wellhard?
Oh, well. Wellhard.
Do you support Walford Town or Millwall, their rival?
Oh, Walford Town.
And finally, are you a Peggy Mitchell or a Pat Butcher?
Pat Butcher.
Lovely. Oh, good. I approve of most of those answers.
Oh, good. Not too many arguments on the podcast just yet.
No, we'll save them for a bit later on. I feel a bit cruel just throwing that at you, but you've done well, and I'm glad you chose I'm glad you chose the sausage surprise over the fishy basket.
I think we both know that was going to be my answer.
So, shall we get on with the review of the week then?
Yes.
We are starting off with Phil, Ben, Callum, poor Denise and Raymond as well. And basically the whole who's going to end up getting Raymond's storyline. So it started off this week with Phil getting a bit of news about Ellie that he wasn't very pleased to hear about.
Yes, Ellie Dawkins, in inverted commas. Ben is absolutely furious that Ellie has taken Phil's 5k out of his endless supply of money. I swear, the man's a millionaire.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? He's got that hole in the wall in his lounge that only Sharon seems to know the combination for.
Yeah, exactly, which is empty sometimes. And then when somebody big and evil demands money, Phil's just able to dip his hand into it and pull out whatever amount of money is required. This time it was 5k. The week started off with it being 5k. And yeah, so Ellie has run off with Phil's 5k, run off with Raymond, run off with the kid. Ben and Callum are furious, and Callum is, of course, sat there in a quandary, unable to decide what he wants to do about his own little secret mission. Callum
was the first one to share with Ben that obviously Ellie isn't what she seems, and she's got a bit of a gangster granny past. But Ben, surprisingly, was the one who was like, "No, I don't want to start a war. Don't tell my dad this. It's best that we just kind of keep out of it."
You've got a mad story when you've got a mad story when Ben's the voice of reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's such a different Ben to when he was first introduced, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I quite enjoy the sort of him and Phil getting on at the moment. It's a nice sort of refreshing change for them to see with them, as opposed to them in utter turmoil all of the time. I'm sure within the next couple of weeks they'll be at each other's throats again. It's nice to kind of have that little sort of relationship there where Phil's going a bit mad. It's the one that steps forward and says, "Right, Dad, let's just calm down a moment. Let's talk about this." It's kind of nice to see that. But then what I am also enjoying, and again, it's not long for this world, but I really am enjoying, is the relationship between Phil and Callum. That's really quite a nice little dynamic, I think.
You can't really tell if he is on the side of the police or he is on the side of the Phil.
I was going to say this, yeah. I have absolutely no idea whose side Callum's on.
No.
And I don't know if we're supposed to be this confused by it. I feel like it's supposed to be coming across clearer to us whose side he's actually on. And I genuinely have no idea, because he's saying to D.I. Thompson that he's got this plan to get Phil on side, and then he's cooperating with literally everything that Phil says.
Yeah.
And then sort of pulling confused little faces when he's on his own. So I'm not entirely sure which way he's swinging.
No, it's really confusing for me. I mean, I think ultimately he wants the best for him and Ben. I think he is doing this for Ben, ultimately. It seems strange that I don't think even Callum knows which is the right path to take, whether it is the police officer or whether it is Phil, and he's kind of just dangling both of them for a little while until he realises what is the right thing to do.
Dangling them like Ben dangled Martin over a bridge.
Exactly.
Weird to believe that he has managed to slot himself so nicely into the Mitchells and into their family. Then how can he believe for a second that the best thing to do would be to send Phil to prison?
No.
Like, how does he think Ben's going to react to that in any way, shape, or form? He's surely better off having Phil on his side. You know, sort of, if I Callum, I was going into a room wearing a bug, I'd be writing Phil little notes saying, "I'm wearing a bug, I don't know what to do, help me." And also, we've got to bear in mind, I'm sure they haven't forgotten about it, but all these secret little meetings that have been going on between Ellie and Phil in the Archers, there's a bug underneath the desk.
I did wonder about that bug. D.I. Thompson said to Callum last week that they had a recording of Callum, and so he had a grip on him, so he had to carry on with the undercover mission that he's given him. But
surely they've got everything that they need to throw both Ellie and Phil in prison at this point.
But this is the strange thing, isn't it? Because by the end of the week, D.I. Thompson was relishing the idea of having both of them potentially, nicked.
But he's apparently got audible evidence of Ellie saying, "I will take £250,000 and I will give you my grandson." That's very, very illegal. I don't know what more he needs.
That is true. I mean, do you think that Raymond would be better off with the Mitchells? Even Ritchie said Ellie is bad, but you've done bad things too. So it's a bit of half a dozen one thing and six of another with this.
I loved it when Ritchie was I love Ritchie anyway, but I loved it when Ritchie was sat there going, "She's bad. You're not as bad as her." Like, how do you know this? Like, all of a sudden we've been told that Ellie is like the worst woman that ever lived, and she's in charge of like essentially the craze. We've got absolutely no evidence of this. We're going purely on what we've been told, and all Ellie has really done is kind of stormed into the Archers, demanded money, and stormed out again. We haven't actually seen her do anything that intimidating yet.
You're absolutely right. We know nothing about Ellie. We've had no past about Ellie. And now all of a sudden we're learning this whole story about her family and they've dealt with the wrong people who now want her family dead. And it's like, how?
Callum knows more about this woman than we do. And I don't even think it's supposed to be a case of, that could know something and it'll be revealed to us soon. No, of course it's not going to be revealed to us. We just have to take Callum's word that all his little homework that he's been doing with D.I. Gaffney is enough for us to know that Ellie's a bad woman. And I feel like we need to know more about her. I want to know more about her character. She's an interesting character, and it's good that I want to know more, but I just get that feeling that we're not going to be told that much more about her before she is unceremoniously dumped somewhere.
Basically, I think we've maxed the information that we are now ever going to be told about Ellie. Trust that the information that Callum and D.I. Thompson have shared with one another, because apparently Callum and D.I. Thompson share a password as well for the computer Met Office mainframe, because when...
What are you doing in the interview room?
When he was on the computer and D.I. Thompson was like, "Why are you using my password?" And it's like, how does Callum know your password?
And why was he doing it in the interview room where they interview suspects? It's like, is that the only bit of the police set that was free that day?
I think you might be right there. I did just think that they had another part of the set built somewhere, so they just thought, just use that part. Kate was kind of mentioned as well, wasn't she?
Yes, it was definitely Kate it was definitely Kate that he was on about, wasn't it?
It has to be. Absolutely has to be.
Because I've seen a few people like kind of theorising that it could be Marston, but Marston doesn't fit with the description that was used, saying that Phil got inside this person's head and ruined her career. That doesn't suit Marston at all, but it totally fits Kate. I can't think of anybody else in the police that description would fit. I'm sure she was married to Phil at one point, wasn't she?
She was married to Phil, yeah. And she opened her nail bar, Sophisticates.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Sophisticates. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
one of my favourite names for a business in Walford I've ever known.
I mean, think about the progression of business names in Albert Square over the past 10 years. We go from that, Sophisticates, a nice little pun, to the Prince Albert. How have we managed to travel from...
Yeah, just blatant disgust. But yeah, no, absolutely. I think that D.I. Thompson has, we now know, has a vendetta against. So it's more personal for him to get Phil than we first thought.
Yeah, we're going to see Kate again. Is Jill Halfpenny returning, do we think?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people excited at the idea of it happening, but I don't think it's plausible, to be honest with you. I don't think Kate could really add any value to it. The mention of it is good, adds a bit of context to why D.I. Thompson is so headstrong about getting Phil arrested, but I don't think it warrants having Kate there, even if it was just for one scene to be like, "Hi, Phil." It'd be a lovely moment, but I think it would be
it would. I just feel the show isn't exactly the show's not in its most subtle of eras at the moment, and I feel that it's just too random a reference to throw in just for reference's sake.
Right.
You know what I mean? I feel like it's there for a slightly stronger reason than attempting to give Thompson some sort of motive as to why he's so after Phil. I feel like there's a very specific reason that was mentioned, because it's a really random character to mention. It's a great character to mention. I love the throwback, but I feel like there's more to it.
Oh. So you think that we might see Kate again?
So I think so. I have a feeling what they do is that they bring her back as a bit like they did with Mel, and bring her back as some sort of bionic woman and make her really cold and sort of icy, and just really set on the idea of bringing Phil down. I feel like they'd give her that sort of role, but I don't know.
When Mel first came back, she wasn't as icy as when she died, sadly. So, I mean, the only thing I can think of Kate's return would be if it was to warn Denise that perhaps if she's going to play with fire, she's going to get burnt. If, she's Denise has agreed to cooperate with Phil now to get Raymond back in a kind of almost like a stopgap. So if they can get custody of Raymond, then it buys them more time to then get more against Ellie. I mean, I can imagine Katie coming back and saying to Denise, or Jack might bring her back deliberately to kind of convince Denise to maybe think again.
That's a good point, because Jack's really not enjoying this plan whatsoever at the moment. He's throwing a strop slightly, and then turn around to Denise and say, "I don't want to be in bed with the Mitchells," as though that's not been his storyline. He spent his entire time on the show bedding Mitchells. He's responsible for half of the Mitchell offspring.
Well, both his kids are Mitchells, aren't they? They're both.
Exactly. I don't want to spend time in bed with Mitchells. All right, Jack.
A very strange decision by Jack, I think.
Would you think Denise and Jack long for this world?
I would be sad if they're not, because I really like Denise and Jack's relationship, and I thought it was a really good one together. I thought that was a good choice to put them together, but that was before any of this madness cropped its ugly head. So I think, and I've heard a few things. I think this may be the end of Jack and Denise. Sadly,
I'm not amazingly sad about that. I feel like it's one of those couples where we're told they're a couple. They share a lot of scenes together. They kiss a few times, but that's basically the basis of their relationship on screen. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it hasn't been the most chemistry between the two characters I've ever seen.
I do see what you're saying. This, when Jack and Denise got together, this was before Denise had any stories other than going and seeing someone on a bench and sympathizing with them or giving advice in the cafe. Now Denise has actually got a meaty storyline to get her teeth into. Yeah, Jack's almost like a piece that doesn't need to be equated to it anymore, which is a shame. But
but then where does Jack go from there? If he hasn't got Denise and he's not attached to the Mitchells, where does Jack go as a character from there?
And also Max is going too. So it leaves Jack with not much left on the square for him to stay.
Not that he had that much anyway. No. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Jack in the coming months. I mean, I'm fine with Denise kind of going solo. Diane Parrish is more than capable of pulling off a storyline all on her own without any sort of love interest in the background whining, which is essentially what Jack's role is at the moment.
He really is a whiner, isn't he? It's the Branning trait, I'm afraid. They got it from their dad, Jim. Jim used to whine.
Whine, beat people up and have sex with other people's wives. That's the Branning way. Why not? And then moving on with the story, Ellie obviously is now demanding more money off Phil. So now it's gone from her stealing £5,000 to her wanting £250,000 by tomorrow.
She's not giving him up easily, is she?
No, she's not. So, I mean, obviously Phil has a plan. I'm assuming he's trying to just keep her sweet at the moment. Is he going to give her £250,000 out of his endless supply?
Well, no, because his plan is, isn't it, to go around that route. So just to keep her thinking that she's going to get that money at the whole time in the background, sneakily grass on her, I guess, is for want of a better term for Phil, and get Raymond that way.
He doesn't need to grass on her because the police have got all of this on record. It doesn't make it.
I think Phil will never part with the money, and I think the story really is when he gets Raymond, what's going to happen then between him and Denise, because that's going to really cause a fracture between obviously the relationships with Ben and Callum toward Bill, and as we've just mentioned, Denise and Jack. And, Denise ultimately didn't want anything to do with Raymond, and now she's being forced into having to have this relationship with this little boy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Denise is... let's be honest, Phil has always been like the component throughout this entire thing from birth that made Denise not want to kind of have this child, sort of thing. If your father's a Mitchell, we've all seen what the children of Mitchells go through. So I think it's probably best that you run far away, my little Raymond. But I think that broke Denise's heart initially. So the fact that Raymond has apparently been handed over to somebody who's even more dangerous than Phil is enough to sort of bring back sort of ball-breaking Denise, who's ready to take on the world and save her offspring. And I think if we get Kim back within this time frame that this storyline is happening, they'll have assistance from Kim as well. Kim wanted to adopt. Yeah, exactly. But I also have a feeling that something's going to happen that means that Raymond doesn't stay around. I think Raymond's going to end up in care ultimately. I mean, for a start off, how can you apply for custody when you've given your kid away at birth? Is that even allowed?
Not sure, but I suppose if it's a situation like it is where both his parents have died.
Let's be honest, if it was social services, they would have to take, one little look at where Denise lives, who her neighbours are. They'd take the kid away faster than you can blink, to be honest. So, we live on Albert Square. No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those stories that ultimately we have to suspend our belief with slightly.
I think from the beginning we've suspended our belief for this story.
Yeah. I'm enjoying this story. It's not one of those stories where I'm kind of like, oh God, not this again. I don't mind it. I'm enjoying sort of like the madness of it and all the different components of it. Because if you actually think and look at the story itself, there are actually a hell of a lot of components to it. And apparently a lot of components still to come. Obviously Lucas is coming back, so we don't know how he's going to slot into things. Is Ellie connected to him in some way? The sky's the limit where they can really take the story. So I'm excited to see where they take it. And I enjoy Phil and Denise on screen together, actually, as well. I think they work well together. I think they've got good chemistry. The actors have got good chemistry on screen. And then obviously got the fallout from Callum ultimately being discovered for what he's doing as well. So I think there's a lot more to come, and I'm excited to see where it goes. It's just quite mad to watch it all unfold at the moment.
You're absolutely right. I think it's time we move on to a bit more of a light-hearted story. And that is Kathy on her new dating app, and maybe not quite so light-hearted. Sharon getting the box of clothing from Dennis, what he wore during Boat Week. And also the continuation of Bobby having this OCD, this cleaning problem that he's kind of developed since Corona and the lockdown had happened. What do you want to pick first?
Okay, I want to talk about Sharon first.
Okay, of course.
Oh yeah, obviously. Queen that I share a birthday with, it transpires. I had no idea. I mean, I say share a birthday. Apparently her birthday's on the 22nd and mine's today. But I think that if you count all the weekends that we lose in Albert Square, plus the episodes that we lost over lockdown, I think I can realistically say that Sharon Mitchell and me share a birthday, and if I can't, then I resign. I think that's absolutely fine to say.
Poetic license is fine.
I think so. Yeah, please. If EastEnders are allowed to get away with stuff, I can say that Sharon and me share a birthday, for God's sake. What I want to talk about, first of all, is, did you hear a text message tone when Sharon was I think she was sat in the allotment or something with Denny's belongings, wasn't she? And just at the end of the scene, did you hear a text message alert go off?
I hadn't, no. I must admit I hadn't.
Because, the typical text message little thing that all characters in EastEnders have when they get a message on their phone, that sort of ding. It sounded just as the scene ended, just before Sharon even reacted to it. And I thought it was my phone that had gone off because it just cut away from it so quickly. If you watch that scene, Denny's belongings that were given to her, and I've watched this a few times now, so I'm fairly convinced that I'm right here. belongings that were returned to Sharon are Denny's clothes that he was wearing on the night of the boat crash, his wallet, which had the West Ham tickets in, and his phone.
So his phone was in the box, was it? So, but surely it can't be charged. Surely it can't still be going. It's months since.
No, I mean, of course not. Of course it hasn't been charged. I'm assuming what's happened is that we're supposed to believe that, you know, whatever was going off on the boat turned Denny's phone off as he sent the message, so that it didn't quite have time to send, and Sharon's just turned it on and then the message is received. Because if you then look at Sharon for the rest of the episode, and the other two episodes that she was in on the other two scenes that she was in on Friday, it actually puts a whole new context on the scenes where she's talking to Ian.
So the scenes were with Ian, aren't they? And they forgive one another.
But Sharon's kind of giving him a few little dodgy looks. She looks a little bit more sort of haunted behind the eyes than she did before. You know, she was just devastated, obviously, at first, because Denny's belongings had been returned to her. Yeah. But she kind of gives him a few funny looks, and I think it puts a whole new context on the scenes if we now look at those scenes saying that Sharon now knows exactly what Ian's role was in Denny's death.
Okay, no, fair enough. I mean, that really does build up then the Ian Bill leaving storyline. That up to this point, we've said that obviously he's got now a history of Max, his Bobby. He's got now also from this week Peter. Peter now knows a secret about him because Peter found out about him stealing or remortgaging Kathy's. Was it the calf he remortgaged from Kath?
Peter helpfully found in an envelope in a drawer. And was like, that looked suspicious, and pulled it out and found out exactly the information.
Yeah. Ian bribed him by saying, well, you're not going to get your allowance then. And he was like, oh, okay, I didn't see anything. Thanks, Dad.
An allowance for a man who's in his mid-20s. I wish I still had an allowance.
No, so do I. Tell me about
it. His allowance and a little bit extra. It's all right, Ian. That's all right.
Yeah, I know. I know considering Ian has Ian wasn't Ian using his allowance initially to pay off Max's debt, but then was able to. It's very confusing. I don't know what Ian has money in pots all over the place, doesn't he?
Oh, he always has, hasn't he? And he's always got lots of businesses that are sort of kind of able to keep him afloat throughout everything. But now he seems to be, be able to give money to Max. So is that little rivalry done for now, or is it going to kind of come back and rear its ugly head, or what?
No, see, that's what I mean. I think that's going to come back at some point. This story for Ian, we know that Adam Woodyard is leaving for an undisclosed amount of time for a break. So there's the story of Max at the moment, and yes, you're right, it's going to rear its head up again at some point. Lots of people, and now if you're right, and Sharon does actually know the real truth, because Ian has admitted some of what he did on the boat, but he's not really disclosed the full amount to Sharon. And Sharon's
hearing this message, if that's what happened, and I'm pretty sure that is. I'm pretty sure Sharon now knows, because it was just a very random. If you look at the way that they shot the scene when she was looking through Denny's belongings, the phone was there. Denny's phone was there, just lying there. And then there was a text message alert or a message alert, and then the scene cut away, and then Sharon sort of returned to the Vic, and they had the conversation. So I'm pretty sure that she now knows. If they had done it that way, then I applaud them, because it was a very, very clever way of doing it. A lot of people will have missed it.
It's incredibly subtle. I didn't spot that noise at all.
I just said earlier that EastEnders isn't in a massively subtle era at the minute, and then they throw that sort of stuff. I'm impressed if that's the way that they've done it, because that's a really, really subtle, clever way of adding another component to essentially Ian's hit list. I
mean, I always think it's a shame that there aren't more scenes with Sharon and Ian. A bit biased because I love them both so much, and they're original characters, and you always need to remember that the original characters are still there. They're a pull for the show, and so to use, as you said, only 2 scenes to kind of bring in this story. If you are right to say that Sharon knows more, again, it's a testament of how very, very good Friday's episode was. Friday's episode was amazing.
I love Friday's episode so much. I loved Friday's episode. The dialogue was beautiful in Friday's episode.
Oh, 100%.
And yeah, I mean, I think almost think it's a shame actually that the storyline is going to go in the direction that it does, because we've actually got 2 Walford stalwarts in charge of the Vic. And how great was that scene when, it was Sharon, Ian, Peter, Kathy. Bobby's a great component to throw in there as well. And they were all just talking about Kathy going on the date and having a little bit of banter between themselves. It was a lovely little scene, and it worked really well. And it was a really nice sort of scene that we haven't seen in the Vic for a long time. Just sort of almost like chatting before work sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was lovely to watch. I really enjoyed it. Before Kathy's date with Ian with an eye. And it was... And I think it worked really well. So I think it's almost a shame that we're going to lose that, because obviously if this is heading in the direction we think it's heading in, then Ian isn't long for the Vic.
It is, you're right. It's going to be a shame when Ian leaves the soap. For a little while, up until this point, I always found Ian to be a bit of a lost character, and he was almost a bit like William Roach for me. I mean, I don't watch Coronation Street, but like William Roach, for me, I got the impression became a bit of a background character and was just there for the sake of being there, almost to just kind of tottle up the years so he can always be like the world's longest ever soap actor. And I felt like they were kind of doing that with Adam Woodyat over time. The fact that they put him in the story with Sharon as well, and it's been a long running one as well, actually, to their testament. I mean, I still wish that Dennis hadn't died, because I think Dennis was such an important character, and I don't think it's really got the payoff that it should have gotten. But then again, you could blame COVID for that, because they had to give it a bit of a rest and a pause. I'm not too sure. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It was nice to see this old school family with Bobby, and I love the actor who plays Bobby as well. And they
I do. I love Bobby so much. Bobby's I think Bobby is my favourite character at the moment. I love Bobby so much, and Clayton is incredible in the role as Bobby. He's got a long career ahead of him, I think. And this whole thing with him having OCD is actually so on the nail of where a lot of people will be with COVID at the moment, just absolutely obsessing over every little clean detail. It's perfect for Bobby's character, and I think it's an actual really good reflection of where we are, and everyone's kind of paranoid and unsure of what to do, and taking all facts to mean that we're all going to die and all of this sort of thing. It makes perfect sense for somebody who is as anxious as Bobby is.
The only thing I'm not enjoying is the fact that Peter is seeing it happening in front of him, played out, and yet Peter doesn't seem to be interested. I think he knows it's happening, but he doesn't seem very interested in it. And I feel a bit...
Oh, no.
I wish that... I know Peter and Bobby have this very strained relationship because of Lucy, but I think Peter would show some concern, more than he is, rather than just walking in saying, what do you want from the Chinese? I'll get you something vegetarian, see you later, and then walk out again. It just seems to have no kind of relationship there. That's the only thing that I think it's missing. I wish that Peter would have more involvement with it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's an interesting component, because you've always got to remember how... I mean, I think we need to remember that I don't think Peter has fully forgiven Bobby for what happened to Lucy yet. You know, especially when he comes in and all of a sudden Bobby's frantically cleaning a picture of Lucy. There's always those reminders there of what he did.
Yeah.
So I wonder how involved Peter actually wants to be in Bobby's life, especially when he walks in and discovers his brother acting a bit weird and a bit shifty, because he's got to remember, he always remembers that, well, that's the guy that killed my sister. That's because he is weird. That's because he is a freak. That's because he is a psycho. You know, those are the thoughts that are always going to go through Peter's mind, I think. And I think the same goes for Ian. You know, as much as they are trying to sort of move on and get on with their lives, and Bobby is slowly becoming more integrated in the family and in the square, that demon of what happened is always going to be there. How involved Peter is ever going to want to be in Bobby's life. I think something quite dramatic will need to happen for Peter to want to actively help Bobby in that sort of situation. I think he's trying his best, and I think he's doing well in the situation that he has been given. But I think that there needs to be more. I agree with you. I want to see more between Peter and Bobby, because I feel like they haven't had that moment of discussion between them like Ian and Bobby have since his return.
Yeah, but it's a shame that Ian and Bobby, they've had that chat and they've had that kind of heartwarming moment, and you thought, good, this is it. They've erased the past. They're starting from square one again. This is the beginning of their relationship, and yet that seems to have been pushed aside as well, because they're, you know, for a little while we thought that when Bobby was starting up the Lucy Foundation, Ian then kind of gave this inclination that he didn't really care, and it was his own daughter as well, like his favorite child, and he didn't, because Bobby was associated with it, he was a bit like, oh yeah, well done, and that was kind of the end of it. I mean, I would love to see an episode, I should say, of Bobby, Peter and Ian just all together and just hashing it out with one another, a full half an hour. I think that would be a really...
I'd love that. A bit like that Branning episode that aired a couple of years ago. Would just be, I think, just before the big sort of Max Christmas.
Yes.
They had a massive argument episode. Something exactly like that would be absolutely perfect. I completely agree with you. But then I'm always a fan of those sorts of episodes. I love those really rooted in character episodes. And yeah, I think a Big Deal episode like that would be absolutely perfect.
Absolutely. I would love to see that. Right. We are moving on again now to Stacey, Kat, all the Slaters having their fun, Kush and his continuous gambling habit, but also Ruby, underhanded Ruby, showing her Alan side this week by getting a potential hit out on Stacey.
That was mad. I mean, it was really interesting the way that. Let's talk about the beginning of the week. And Kush is clearly his gambling is getting worse. He's now got people breathing down his neck. And we think that somebody is looking at Kush. We think that somebody's kind of after Kush because there's a hooded man in the background when he's talking to Martin, and we know he's a bad guy because he's smoking. And only bad people smoke in soap. And yeah, I think it was really interesting. And then, what do you think of this whole Stacey and Ruby rivalry at the moment?
I like it because I wanted Ruby to come back and be her father's daughter. Stacey brought it up at the beginning of the week that Ruby has this chip on her shoulder that she never did live up to what her father, she was always second best, and there was the fire and she was the one who was saved. There was always a part in Johnny Allen's heart that he wished that it was her sister that had been saved. And so it was always, I felt like she needed to prove herself. And the only way she could do it was almost to take over where her dad had left off. When Ruby was first introduced, that was what I wanted her to become, and she didn't. And actually, I loved her story, her introduction storyline with the consent story. But because of her hate towards Stacey, which I feel was real genuine as well, like she just despises Stacey for everything because she feels like she's done nothing wrong. But what surprised me the most was the fact that she has these connections and that she was willing to use them. And she's obviously always had these connections, but she's now decided this is the time. This is now I'm going to show my cards and let people know that you don't mess with an Allen.
I think it's a little bit sort of odd that these two women that have such a, they have quite a dark history in common with each other. Both are rape victims. And I feel like it's a little bit kind of off that Ruby would then hire a man to attack Stacey. I feel like that's a little bit kind of twisted, but I think we're not supposed to pay that much attention to that sort of aspect of it.
There's a part of me that thinks that Ruby has triggered somehow, and that and her trigger was money. Yeah, and she. And she's almost got the prize, which is Martin, and now she wants to punish Stacey by getting the kids as well. And I guess her mentality is that of violence is the cure for all of her problems. In a funny way, I would love to see a catfight between Ruby and Stacey. That would be.
So would I. Perfect.
It'd be fun to see that actually in the club as well. Just have her running around, just destroying one another. I must say, though, it was a surprise for me that Ruby had done that, though. At the end of Thursday's episode, when you saw Stacey beaten, I thought initially that it was to do with Kush and that they thought that was Kat. They thought Kat was the one getting beaten. And then on the beginning of Friday's episode, when I think it was the first or second scene, when you saw Ruby get a text message and there was the photo of Stacey, I just genuinely gasped. I was like, oh.
Yeah, so did I. I gasped. My throat hurt. I gasped that hard. And I think it's an interesting direction to take her. I agree. I'm really actually enjoying these two sparring at the moment. That both of them are sort of strong enough to take each other on, which is always nice. Because I think when you've got a strong character like Stacey, there's a lot of characters that you sort of think they wouldn't stand a chance against Stacey because she'd just knock them out.
Yeah.
in the Slater tradition. I think Ruby's got more than enough kind of balls in her to take Stacey on. And she's also playing dirty as well because she's going in on Lily and sort of trying to manipulate Lily against Stacey, which I don't like new Lily, I've got to be honest with you. Nothing to do with the actress, but she's had such a massive personality transplant.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Lily was always so subtle, and like her nuance was very kind of like she would approach things with a very calculated mind. I base this all on that caravan scene when she was hidden in the box with Jean. But I know I loved Claudia Winkleman Lily, and now this new this kind of new, very brash and very upfront Lily. I mean, it makes sense.
They're going for, isn't it? They're even dressed the same. They've got similar sorts of attitude. I mean, new Lily would have bullied me at school. You kind of see it in her. She's got that sort of evil glint in her eye. And I wonder if they're sort of kind of building her up to be the next Janine, watching this kid that isn't nice to start off with and then sort of gets worse as she grows up.
If they are planning this kind of new Janine character, It just seems, like you say, it feels like a personality transplant for her, and I wish I wish a little bit they'd done it a touch more subtly than the way they did it.
Yeah, I do as well. I mean, she literally came, the character's first appearance when she kind of stormed out of the car. Nah, I want to watch this. It's kind of like, whoa, all right there, okay, like, and all of a sudden, you suddenly got, out of nowhere, Stacey and Lily at loggerheads, clearly. It's like when she was in the Vic and they were talking about Ruby and all of that sort of thing, and Lily takes all the information that she got from Stacey and then gives it to Ruby later. They were talking like, it's like Lily's playing on this new iPad that she's got from Kush because she manipulated him into giving her an iPad. And Stacey's immediate reaction to seeing her with this tablet is, you better not have nicked that, as though that's typical Lily thing to do.
I know. Which is like, where did that come from? I don't know any record of her ever being a thief.
So the new Lily is like a kleptomaniac all of a sudden, and Kat was just sort of smiling at her going, oh, Lily. Typical Lily. Yeah. That's my girl. It's so odd.
It really is. It's the strangest thing. I mean, yeah, you're right. I think it makes sense. I just wish that they'd done it a little bit more subtle. Instead of just being thrown in our face. This is Lily now. Deal with it. It's like, okay, we will.
Yeah, just it's very odd.
Give us a moment to settle.
As the story progresses, obviously Friday's episode culminates in Kheerat and Stacey sleeping together.
Now, see, that's what I was going to talk to you about, because there's a history of Stacey and Suki, because Suki's not mad keen on the Slaters after the whole Jean debacle, finding out about her faking cancer and so forth. I mean, I love Suki. Any scene with Suki in it, I will 100% approve. It could literally just be her sitting in the cafe doing nothing, and I'd be like, this is the best scene of the week. Let's honour her.
Absolutely. Give her a one-hander like Dot had. I'm well up for that. Quite happy with that idea.
I mean, and I tell you what, they could do a lovely one hand with her. Maybe if she was on the phone to her husband who was in prison and you only heard her side of the conversation. I mean, it'd be a tricky one to write, but oh my God, I'd watch that all day long.
Absolutely. After winning, she writes herself. Fabulous character. Absolutely adore Suki.
Oh, 100%.
But yeah, there's clearly a nice amount of build up for a nice Suki Stacey rivalry. Because do we think we're going to have another little mini Stacey, another little mini Kheerat on the way after last night? Is that where it's heading?
Oh my goodness! I mean, the actress who plays Stacey again, she's Lacey Turner. She's due to leave again because she's got pregnant.
Pregnant again.
I know. How inconsiderate of her.
I know, and to be fair, it saves them having to do what they were doing last year when they were just trying to find different ways of covering up Lacey Turner's stomach. That was my favourite game to play, watching EastEnders, watching all the different things that they try and cover Lacey Turner with to kind of prevent us from seeing how big her stomach was getting. So maybe that's an easy way of doing it. Just, because she is actually pregnant and we don't need to hide it.
Yeah, another sprog is on the way for Stacey. I mean, I like the scene between Kheerat and Stacey, for me, was fantastic. It was just amazing. It was well written, performed perfectly. The admission of each other, saying Stacey talked about Bradley. It was fantastic. Kheerat talked about Chantel. And also, I think a lot of people were like, oh, God, and it ended with them sleeping together. But actually, I think they was right. I think it was a comfort thing for them that night, and they just needed it. It was just, if it never gets mentioned again, I'll be fine with it. So in a strange way, I kind of hope that she doesn't get pregnant with it, because it means then it is attached to her. But in another strange way, I would love it to be brought back up, because I would love this rivalry between her and Suki, because, just anything. It'd just be a fantastic rivalry between them.
I think let's just accept that Stacey's getting pregnant with Kheerat's baby. I think that's pretty obvious now. I think that's where it's heading, and I'm not that mad at it. That's fine. And I absolutely loved the scene between them. Again, great chemistry between the two characters that had never really interacted before. All the stuff Stacey was saying about Bradley, you kind of realise that she's never really gotten over Bradley's death. She hasn't really gotten over the guilt in her role in his death. I thought it was interesting that both of them sort of gave quite a guarded account of their own stories. She never really told him that it was Max that she'd had the affair with. She didn't really reveal anything that was the events leading up to Bradley's death. And Kheerat actually to his credit, didn't even ask.
That's because Kheerat is a gentleman.
He is an absolute gent. I like Kheerat, actually. I thought when he first came in, I thought he was going to be a slightly more villainous character than he's turned out to be.
With one exception who has gone now. I actually like all the Panasers. I like Ash, I like Vinny, Kheerat, Suki, as I've gushed about numerous occasions. I love the family, and I would happily have the family become the centre of the show. The new Mitchells, if you want to say, but I would.
Why not?
I really would. I would love them. I would love them to have the Vic.
Do you know what? I'd take that. I'd take them having the Vic quite happily. You know, I wonder how much longer Sharon's going to have it for, and I think they are a sort of natural progression for them is to have a big business in the square.
Yeah, they need to be the centre. I think there's so many stories that can splinter from the Panasars. There's, and because they're a very close family, because Suki made it that way, and there's so many family members that can still come in. The elusive dad that we keep hearing from time to time, and I would welcome anyone to build up the Panasars. I really would.
Absolutely, I agree. More Panasars we need, much more. Also, briefly going back to something, but it also sort of includes the Panasars. There was a very odd scene between Ash and Peter in the Albert. Did you notice?
Oh, yes, where they seem to be flirting with one another.
Yeah, what's going on there? I don't want that. That needs to not happen.
I mean, Ash is bisexual, so
is she?
Yeah. She's openly bisexual. I don't particularly care for them two to be together, and it doesn't really seem to make much sense for them two to be together. And it's such a shame because I think Iqra and Ash were such a lovely relationship. Shall we move on quickly to about Iqra and Ash and Habiba? So obviously Habiba's left because Habiba doesn't trust Ash and wants her out the house. Iqra said no, and so now Habiba's gone, which, let's start with that straight away. The actress that was it. That was her final scene.
I'm gutted.
No fanfare at all.
I love Habiba. I really miss her. I'm going to miss her a lot. You know, she didn't really do a lot. She sort of had scenes where she would walk through the restaurant with no dialogue whatsoever, carrying a tray. But God, she was good at it.
But I mean, she was outstanding at it. It was again a highlight of the week. For me, they wasted Habiba. They really wasted Habiba. There was so much they could have done with her and Iqra.
Yeah, I mean, I think to be fair, they've wasted the sisters as a component. Really, they've come in. They came in really quickly and randomly anyway, and was quickly kind of given the restaurant. And then it's like they've had no idea what to do with them ever since. Like they've kind of had this they've never really had an A story to themselves. You know, Iqra sort of had a mini little coming out story to her grandparents, which was nice. And then Habiba had the thing with Adam, and then with Jags, and then that's literally been about it. And I think both of them had much more potential. Because I wonder how much longer Iqra is going to be around for, to be honest, because now she's got nobody around. Her and Ash clearly aren't going to stay together for much longer. So is Iqra soon off as well?
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, they've slowly just dwindled into nothing. So there was the grandparents and, as you say, Iqra and Habiba, and now it's just Iqra, and Ash seems to be kind of falling off now toward Peter. So yeah, it's a bit worrying for Iqra. What can you do with Iqra? I mean, her whole story now is that she started a business with Keegan, and she goes on about her business degree. I mean, that's all you know. That's all there is to talk about her. it's tricky. Yeah, it's really tricky.
And I think that, I think there's a lot. I quite enjoy the sort of dynamic between her and Ash, and Iqra sort of having this sort of moral upstanding as to, and sort of maybe discovering how bad the Panasars are. And more specifically how bad Suki is through Ash, and sort of exploring that relationship. I think the potential is there for character development there, and for Iqra to be her own person, but I don't feel that they're going to go in that direction with her.
That's the strange thing, isn't it? It's that the whole story was that Ash wanted to get away from her family. The family were introduced, and she was quite quick to then go back to them. And then apart from the odd comment here and there about how her and her mum have this very strained relationship, it's like basically Ash is now just a Panasar. Like, she is now part of the family again, part of the group. She's got secrets. Yeah. She's keeping secrets, hence why Habiba left. But not just that one, there's the secret with Vinny as well. And there was the party, and where Vinny got very protective of Ash. And there's that kind of story that we've not really developed any more about. I mean, why was Vinny so protective over Ash? Was there something in the past that has happened between them that I'd like to see develop? I just, as you say, I just think that it's a huge shame that Habiba and Iqra there was so much potential for them, and it just kind of just fell to the wayside, and that's pretty much their story. They are a relic of John York, wasn't he? Like one of the last characters that were introduced by him before.
Yeah, no, it was literally sort of like Hey Oates arrived, and John York was kind of like, oh, by the way, here's these two characters. Play with them, off you go.
Yeah, have fun,
and then
bye.
Sort of like, yeah, have fun, bye. They have the restaurant, bye. And then sort of left, and then Hey Oates clearly hadn't, and John Stone clearly hadn't had a clue what to do with them since. And I think it's a shame, because Habiba was a great comedy character. The sort that EastEnders doesn't get very often. Sort of that, I loved, sort of Bumblebee Habiba and Detective Habiba and all of this kind of thing. She was a ridiculous character, but I enjoyed her. I thought she had that beautiful sort of vanity about her. I mean, the fact that, when we were getting all of the updates, what all the characters have done during lockdown, one of Habiba's, or pretty much only Habiba's, was that she's got her contouring down.
That's true. They gave her nothing for her background.
Nothing whatsoever. So it's a shame, I think. It's a real shame. I mean, she's not ever going to come back, is she? I think we've lost Habiba now. I think that's her done forever, is it?
I mean, in 4 years' time, when Jags is out of prison, perhaps they might come back and reprise their role. But the actress who plays Habiba has posted on her social media. Someone asked her, oh, would you come back to EastEnders? Would you do another soap? And she pretty much slapped them down and said, no, no more soaps for me. I have other work now.
Okay, then that's that then. Bye then, Habiba. Nice knowing you.
The next topic we're going to talk about you'll enjoy, which is Jay and Honey and Lola.
Yes.
I know you love Jay. There's some subtle hints that Lola is feeling a little bit maybe suffocated by the relationship with her and Jay now. And yet again, it's the same old cycle. Lola's now thinking, oh, I think I want to get out of it. But instead, she instead invited him to live together. Not that subtle, I guess. But
no.
I mean, there's a few rumours tottling around that there's going to be a Honey and Jay story and that there's a relationship developing between them two.
I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah. I don't know. It's a bit weird for me because essentially, would Jay do that to Billy? I don't think he would. I don't feel like that's particularly true to Jay's character, if I'm honest.
That's true, because Billy brought up Jay, essentially. It's funny how Honey and Jay are such good friends. Like, they were delivering parcels this week, and that's how Honey got set up on a date. I just feel like Jay's going to be so heartbroken. He's going to want a shoulder to cry on, and it's going to be Honey's. And you know how soaps like to make the shoulder you cry on end up being the one you also sleep with later on in the episode. So it seems to be heading that way, I think.
Well, we sort of also need to talk about the fact that, Honey's date is not looking as though it's going to be the funnest night of her life. So I think that I presume that what's going to happen is whatever goes on this date, Jay is going to be sort of knight in shining armour. And so mixed in with him saving Honey from some horrific fate and whatever he discovers about Lola in the next couple of weeks is ultimately going to result in the pair of them suddenly becoming inseparable and realising what soulmates they are and realising how much they require each other's bodies. And it's going to be beautiful and chemistry is going to be up there with the likes of Den and Angie, and it's going to be incredible. We both know that's not going to happen.
No.
But it's, I don't know, it is what it is, but I'm not a huge fan of the idea, to be honest. Maybe it will transpire on screen to be okay. I'm not holding my breath, to be honest.
I mean, it's nice to have Honey. It's nice for Honey to have a story which isn't either Billy infatuated about her or her infatuated about Billy. It's nice that Honey's actually having a story away from Billy now.
Yeah, and it's nice for Jay to have a story full stop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, a wasted actor, someone who has shown his chops at playing a serious role or story. It's just... again, they don't seem to know what to do. Lola was introduced by Lola was introduced by Kato's, wasn't she?
Yeah, she came along with new Ben.
That's it. Well, that's what I mean. She just seems to be the tag along to Ben. Everything seems to be she was only there because they needed to find a way to introduce Ben. And, Ben's introduction was that he was trying to get one up on his dad and steal his money. And then that got forgotten very quickly when they started introducing the Ballum story. So now, because of it, an off-cut is also being that Lola has nothing to do anymore. And so this just seems to be the cycle of, oh, I'm bored with Jay. Oh, I'm bored with Jay. Oh, no, I do love Jay after all. Oh, no, I'm bored with Jay again. And I just think that if they do get rid of this relationship between her and Jay, there's really nothing for Lola to stay on for anymore.
No, I agree. I mean, I don't mind Lola as a character, but I think that again, it's another character that they don't seem to have anything to do with. It's her and Peter. They've got history, they've got potential, but I think that yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a huge amount to keep Lola around, other than Lexi, of course. But I think Lexi kind of works in the sort of Mitchell household. You know, there's room for her there. So I kind of wonder I do wonder how much longer Lola's got, to be honest.
I don't think she's long for the square, which again, but there's so many characters are going. It just feels,
it's a bit weird.
It feels terrifying that we're now talking about, potentially another one could now go. Maybe we should just let them settle down a little bit. But then I suppose there's lots going, but there's lots being introduced. I mean, we have Frankie's mum coming into the soap soon. Kate, thank you, as well. So, you know, I suppose they're balancing the sheets. They're doing it the one in, one out method quite well.
Yeah, I sense a messy Christmas is approaching. A sort of messy time approaching Christmas, and which we're going to be looking at sort of the debris left over from Christmas with all the characters and thinking, oh dear.
Anyway, last story then, and a really strange relationship, I guess, is developing between Shirley and Gray. Mick has decided he doesn't really want anything to do with his mum anymore. He's warned Gray, but little does he know that perhaps he should be more warning Shirley, because Gray has got the dark secret of him and Chantel.
Dishwasher history.
They do. For me, it's got echoes when she was sided with Dino with the story, and she kind of stayed with him and then discovered what Dino had done, and then tried to drown him in the bath. Do you feel this kind of a very similar story?
Yeah, maybe that would be a great little kind of circle on Shirley's character. He was going through this whole thing of making Chantel hold her breath under the bath, so he then starts living with Shirley, who drowns him in the bath. Why not?
I mean, why the hell not? It's poetic. It's justice, isn't it? I suppose. And as we've said already, like, EastEnders at the moment have not been very subtle with their hints of what potentially could happen. And there was that bath scene with Chantel. So are we heading that way again?
Maybe Shirley's going to drown. Shirley might drown Gray. Yeah, let's just go for that. That might happen. We don't know a huge amount else that is going to happen between Shirley and Gray. It's an interesting pairing. It's a bit of a random pairing, and it'll be interesting to see how. I mean, to be fair, I've got to say, I prefer this to where I thought it was going between him and Whitney.
Oh, absolutely.
I prefer this random little direction it's going in, as opposed to seeing Whitney get with another abuser, then start being abused herself, and then that all comes out at Christmas. So I'm more into seeing where this goes with Shirley, because actually it gives Linda Henry something to do, because Shirley's been quite quiet for quite a while now, so it gives her a story.
But she became Phil's partner in crime for a little bit, but that's kind of just fallen to the side now. And I mean, Linda Henry needs a story, really. Again, another actress who has so much potential, and they just don't. And I think to partner up with Gray it's an interesting dynamic. I don't know, they're both very serious people, and I think they could potentially help one another out, but it just depends on, inevitably, I think Shirley's going to be the one who finds the secret out, about Gray. It interests me of how that will play out, whether Shirley will be very calm and just say, you have to go to the police, because Gray came very close to actually admitting what he'd done in the courtroom, and perhaps it will just take another little gentle push from Shirley eventually for him to just out and out do it, and him.
I don't think Shirley does anything gently. It'll be more a shove.
yeah, a loud shove by Shirley.
Yes.
Who knows? I mean, it was only like one scene right at the beginning of the week, but obviously that's something that's going to develop because they're now living together. Goodness knows what they're up to. They've made their own little bubble, and more of that to come, I think.
Yes, I think so. I think it'll be more of a focus in the coming weeks.
Lovely. Well, there we go. That was our first roundup, Rob.
There you go.
Do you fancy just chatting with a few comments that people have sent to us?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Here we go. So this is I Ain't Want to Gossip.
You know me, I ain't one to gossip.
So, as usual, we ask you to send us your thoughts on our Twitter or Instagram. Just find us by searching @Walford Weekly, or our Facebook group. You can click to join by searching Walford Weekly Podcast and then click to join in. You can also find us and comment on our YouTube channel. Don't forget, if you are listening to this on our YouTube channel, to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And it's very helpful. So thank you very much. Anyway, here's a few comments we got on our Instagram to start with. Sydney Dumphy has said, the lows of this week has been Callum, and the highs have been Shirley, Sharon, Bobby, and Denise. They are all icons.
Agreed. I can fully endorse that viewpoint.
Excellent. So we asked you to send some comments about Ellie, the character, and you did on our Twitter. Mr. K Phillips 1 had said, I want her so much to be a great character and not just another boring Mitchell and gangster plot device. I mean, you love Ellie, don't you?
Yeah, I do love Ellie, but I think he's right, and I think that's probably what we're going to get as well. I don't think I don't think Ellie's going to be the most nuanced character we've ever had in the history of Walford. So I think what we've got at the minute is pretty much what we're getting, unfortunately.
Asco Grove on Twitter has said, I'm sorry, but I think I've given Ellie enough of a chance now. The actress cannot act, and I am done with this gangster rubbish. I mean, that's unfair. I think she's a good actress. I just think that...
I think she's all right. I don't think she's... she's not Laurence Olivier, but I think she's she's good at what she's been given. It's a pretty flat character in terms of what she's been given. I think she does it well. I think she deals with Phil well. I think the pair of them work well together.
I agree with you. I think that it's just a shame. I think if she'd come in as being a bit more of a happier character, perhaps it's Misha, isn't it? I think Misha Paris. I think she would have been a bit more better tailored for that than playing the character she plays. But I mean, when she comes on screen, I don't go, oh, I enjoy her.
No.
We also asked you to get in touch with us about Habiba's goodbye, because that was a bit of a shock to us all. At Caddy CTS Lover on Twitter has said, it felt really final, so I'm not surprised she's leaving. It's a shame it didn't work out, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Iqra leave before long. Well, that's what we said as well, wasn't it? It's I think not far behind Iqra is going too.
She should have got Julia's theme, I think.
Do you think?
That was the only appropriate way for Habiba to leave would have been Julia's theme played on a kazoo. I think that would be perfect.
I love that idea. That's totally 100%. I mean, we've talked about it on the podcast, Ben and I, in the past. They've not used a Julia's theme yet. Since this...
It's been a while, hasn't it?
It's since Oates and Hall, I'm thinking of. Since Kate Oates and John Sen, they've never used a Julius theme. This is the longest they've not used a Julius theme, I'm sure.
So who was the last person to get one? You had a record, didn't you, of all the Julius themes?
We did. Gosh, you're pulling me up here. I have to be honest, I can't remember. The last person who should have had a Julius theme was Carmel when she left and went off in a taxi.
Yes.
She should have even had a Duff Duff, and they took that away from her because the baby was put outside the Ahmed's door, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. Well, I'll tell you what then, listeners, there's your homework for the week.
Yes.
Find out who last had a Julius theme and let us know.
Yeah, so we can moan about it a bit.
Yeah.
At Jim Bobats on Twitter said, what is going on with EastEnders? So many good characters are getting the chop. Give them some good storylines instead of rehashing the boring Ben and Phil cringe gangster storyline. I mean, we said we don't hate the story, but I think that they could easily give other people stories which have a bit more depth, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the writers at all times think that Phil needs to be rivaled with someone. As long as Phil is somebody at any one time, then the show's fine. As long as Phil's got someone to yell at and punch and yell and be cross with, then that's sort of Phil's role at the moment. Yeah,
it makes him happy. And one final comment then from Matt Cherry, who has said, Lacey Turner has made Stacey one of the show's iconic characters. She 100% deserves to be in the same pantheon as the likes of Sharon, Michelle, Pat, Peggy and Angie. She can convey sadness, anger and humour with equal skill and has chemistry with everyone she shares a scene with. Would you agree with that?
I think so, yeah. Lacey Turner is incredible for the show, and I think Friday showed that, didn't she? She takes any script and just completely makes it perfect. So yeah, she's a great actress. I agree with sort of Stacey's iconic status. I think.
And I do too. I think she's just got a few more years yet, and I think they just need a partner. It's a shame they've kind of given this rivalry with Ruby and Stacey, but at the same time, maybe this is like the beginning of the Pat and Peggy era.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
Oh, I hope so. A Martin Frank.
Oh gosh, yes, of course. Why didn't we say it before? Oh my goodness. It's all there.
I can deal with that.
Yeah, I'm more than happy with that. Okay, right. More to come indeed. Right, so thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you Rob for joining me.
Oh, pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. I hope I'm back next week.
Yeah, well, we'll see. No, of course you will. And you guys can join us, both Rob and I, next week as well for the next new episode of Walford Weekly Podcast. Don't forget you can listen to us on any of your favourite podcast apps. You can also listen to us on YouTube, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again. I hope you will have a good, safe week, and we'll speak to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.